just particularly now in the main section, which is important from the perspective of mains, particularly in the decoded section particularly, we are going to take a look at two articles. The first is about overcoming AMR. AMR essentially is antimicrobial resistance here. So, what has happened is, see, there is a latest version of, say, the National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance. Essentially, what government is acknowledging is our earlier plan, the current plan in operation about AMR, antimicrobial resistance, is not enough to control this crisis that India is facing of, say, antimicrobial resistance. So, because see, antimicrobial resistance, the topic is very important. In prelims also, UPSC has asked the question on antimicrobial resistance. If you remember properly, there was few years back, there was a question on what are some of the reasons responsible or reasons for, say, growing antimicrobial resistance in India. So, many times you will get a question in prelims as well as mains, but from the perspective of, say, managing this antimicrobial resistance, there is this policy, National Action Plan on AMR particularly, and we have the version 2.0 now. So, government is essentially acknowledging its failure, but version 2.0 is not yet out. So, essentially we do not know the specifics of it, but let us see let us see what article argues here about, say, antimicrobial resistance. So, and some of the data points given in this article you must actually note down, so that you can utilize such data points effectively in your answers. So, as I said, in a welcome move, the center has released a further version of the policy, that is National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance, though the details are not out yet, but essentially what it conveys is government seriousness about tackling this particular crisis of health, crisis associated with health. So, India's, let us look at what exactly is this national plan. So, first we will look at the national plan, and then we will go through the main parts of the article that is there in the Hindu particularly. So, this is India's National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance. What it involves is, it tackles antimicrobial resistance. Obviously, we all know what exactly is AMR. AMR is a global concern, and it is an India's initiative of, in line with WHO's Global Action Plan on AMR. So, this particular plan of India is based on WHO's own plan of, say, tackling AMR of, say, 2015 to 2020. So, some of the provisions are are directly taken from there also. So, what are the provisions here? So, improving awareness and understanding of AMR among health professionals and the public, that is the primary concern associated with this particular plan. Another important is strengthening surveillance of antibiotic resistant infections in humans, animals and the environment overall, reducing the incidence of, say, through better hygiene or sanitation or infection and measures associated with that. And there is optimizing antimicrobial use in humans. Obviously, we have banned some of the highly known antibacterial sort of drugs in poultry or even in animal husbandry. Promoting research and development of new antibiotics, strengthening regulatory framework to ensure rational use of antibiotics. So, irrational use is responsible for growing antimicrobial resistance. We all know this. We all have this habit of purchasing any sort of antibacterial or antimicrobial from, say, the medicines counter and medicinal over the counter drugs essentially. So, but we just purchase it and we never sort of complete the course. So, to a certain extent the misuse is responsible for growing antimicrobial resistance also. Say, these are some of the components associated with the plan. There is awareness and education, there is surveillance, there is also infection prevention and control, like promoting hand hygiene, sanitation and vaccination. Particularly, the sewage treatment is also sort of a worry when it comes to antimicrobial resistance. So, we are working on that also, Swachhata particularly. The implement hospital infection control programs is also part of the National Action Plan. Rational use of antimicrobials is promoted, research and innovation is being promoted, international cooperation with bodies like WHO, FAO with One Health approach. So, One Health approach is very, very important here. So, One Health approach is important aspect of this particular National Action Plan on AMR particularly. So, essentially implementation mechanism of that particular National Action Plan is also important. Obviously, it is implemented or led by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare here, and of some supporting ministries, agriculture, husbandry, animal husbandry, environment, science and technology. Monitoring annual review is done by National Task Force on AMR. There is a National Task Force on AMR that does the annual review. So there is a global AMR situation. So let's look at the article now. So what exactly is the article saying? So these are some of the basics of the plan that is currently in operation. We don't have the operation, the version 2.0 out yet, but there is the news about, say, news about that particular action plan. So when it comes to the news itself, the article itself, in October 2023, WHO released Global Antibiotic Resistance Surveillance Report. So according to that report, in India, approximately 1 in 3 bacterial infections were resistant to commonly used antibiotics compared to 1 in 6 globally. So this is very, very alarming sort of trend associated with India, that 1 in 3 bacterial infection in India were resistant to over-the-counter sort of common antibiotic essentially. That proportion is 1 in 6 globally. So contributing factors for India's high burden is mentioned is high infection disease prevalence, overuse and misuse. Gaps in surveillance is also responsible for that. High resistance pathogens, like particularly E. coli is very, very resistant to general antibacterials nowadays. Similarly is the Klebsiella or pneumonia. So some forms of pneumonia are not getting controlled with common antibacterials nowadays. What are the reasons for it? Is essentially misuse of, say, antibacterial medicine earlier, and that has actually created the AMR sort of crisis, the antimicrobial resistance crisis in India. So obviously another important reasons are veterinary practices, soil and water health issues, and agriculture and aquaculture is also responsible for that. As I earlier said, One Health approach is getting promoted. So what exactly is this One Health approach? You can clearly see the One Health, that is essentially animal health, human health and environmental health are all, are all interrelated, interdependent on each other, and until and unless we take care of all these aspects, we will not be able to take care of overall means health aspects associated with us only. So we cannot exclude these two. Like if we want to promote or we want to have healthy lives, we have to have healthy animal lives and healthy environmental health also. So that's the case. So AMR's widespread impact has led to adoption of One Health approach. That is very true. National Action Plan has promoted One Health. That is very, very vital. Essentially it aims to address resistance comprehensively across communities. So whether it is, animals or biodiversity, or whether it is about, say, overall environmental health, whether it is swachhata, whether it is cleanliness or other aspects, we are actually, looking at the AMR problem very holistically. That's what, means One Health approach is all about, and that is getting promoted or being promoted by National Action Plan. So first program or first plan actually raised awareness. That is true. Achievements have been given here, so you can just look at the achievements. Ban on colistin is as a growth promoter in animal husbandry. This is also very, very important achievement associated with AMR. So this has been very big achievement. There are some shortcomings like weak implementation. Only Kerala successfully implemented state level policies, showing a slight drop in community AMR levels. So only Kerala holistically actually implemented this particular National Action Plan. So very, very important aspects that has been given in this article, and this is the rightful conclusion, that aim for robust result driven and national program that delivers measurable reductions in AMR. So until and unless you focus at the state level and the implementation level, the new plan needs to have the implementation, or needs to get to the implementation right. So very, very important. Another important article, the second article is, this is a practice question for you. Another important article is about India's new direction towards Asia. So this particular article is important from the perspective of GS2 international relations. See, what the article here argues is that Asia is at center of the world and India should focus on self-sustaining growth. So until and unless we ourselves become the growth engine, means we will not be able to drive the overall foreign policy direction of, say, means larger Asian continent. So essentially the article bats for the overall holistic, not just soft power or hard power, but overall economic reality of India being such that it drives the overall things in the Asian continent itself. So, to certain extent, the article starts with the photograph of Russian president, Indian prime minister and Chinese president at SCO particularly, and it is contrasting with, say, the geo-economic alignment that is there with of G2 particularly. See, G2 is a geo-economic alignment. Why I am saying this? It is not a geopolitical alignment, it is a geo-economic alignment between US and China. So, they are hand in hand when it comes to economy, but when it comes to, say, political or geopolitics, they are bitter rivals. So, to certain extent, these two pictures of SCO and, say, G2 shows that the centrality of China. So, China is is writing these rules to certain extent, or essentially China is, what it indicates also is Asia is the center of all that is happening in the 21st century. So, even US Secretary of State in the Senate, that the story of 21st century will be written in Asia. That is the statement given by US Secretary of State in the Senate meeting. So, essentially see, means what exactly is the statement of US Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore? What he says is, what are US priorities with the vis-a-vis India? So, to pull India to its sideways, to its side away from China and get India to stop buying cheap Russian oil. Although Mr. Modi later, means our Prime Minister later made it clear that our foreign policy, our future cannot be dictated by others. So, strategic autonomy is at the base of everything India does. So, foreign policy is driven by national interest, and we will look at our own national interests. We will take our own decisions. So, that is what our own government has clarified as well, despite the US pressure to stop, say, Russian oil. So, India at a foreign policy inflection point, that is very true. India is at an inflection point when it comes to foreign policy. It is on the cusp of becoming one of the largest economies, that is true. The US is upending multilateralism in recent times. We have all seen with its policies, with its new alignments, with its new demands on the world economy. India is strengthening ties with China and Russia. So, this is very contrasting sort of picture that is emerging. Earlier, what used to happen is India is considering China as its bitter rival, geopolitical rival, but there is a new geoeconomic reality that India cannot deny. So, that is why there is a new rapprochement when it comes to Russia as well as China with respect to India, and questions about US intentions are very, very high. That is true, because the US policies vis-a-vis India have been fluctuating a lot. There is no common theme associated, although the relationship remains strategic, but there are some doubts when it comes to intentions associated with respect to India. Managing relations with major powers, you can see that China trust but verify approach has been taken. So, that is the approach that has been taken vis-a-vis China, trust but verify. So, ongoing negotiations on the international front, ongoing negotiations on the international front or international borders in Ladakh. So, border security is an emerging area when it comes to our relations with China. With Russia, we have age-old partnership, like 75 years of strategic ties, particularly defense cooperation. S-400 missile is there. Operation Sindoor, in Operation Sindoor, it became very, very important. US, there is a concern about, say, US intentions and US pressure on India and how it is handling India, means relations with India, with its economic policies associated with tariffs. Analysts argue that India does not need a binary choice between US or China. So, India again is following its national interest and is focusing on, say, multi-alignment and with strategic autonomy as its base. So, strategic shift towards Asia, future directions, focus on Asia remains strong. That is to focus on Asia remains very strong. Focus on Asia is there. So, that is true. Focus on Asia is there. You can clearly see focus on Asia and Asian markets particularly. Regional partners, India is also seeking regional partnership with Japan particularly is very, very successful partnership India has. Particularly Asia represents 2/3 of global population wealth, making it central to global strategy overall. So, and India is making it a center of attention as well. So, essentially that is happening. Regional and trade opportunities are abundant, particularly regional and trade opportunities are abundant. For example, India is engaged in all this. BRICS is there, SCO is there, ASEAN is there. So India is prioritizing all this. Also, there is potential re-entry into RCEP. So this also India has to rethink its step vis-a-vis RCEP. Earlier, India denied the participation in RCEP, but now it has to realign itself, including trade concessions outside WTO rules, because Trump is actually appending everything there is when it comes to global order associated with trade. A modus vivendi with China has to be come down, has to be there, so that we can manage our relations better. India is transitioning from developing country mindset to an emerging power engaging as a peer. So this important aspect is very, very vital, and we have all seen the result of it. Operationalizing strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy is at base of it all. So as I said earlier, alignment with Global South in UN on sustainable development is there, and also highest growth rate, huge potential till 2100, largest labor pool and highest number of poor people as well. So that is the challenge, but again the growth potential is there, and there will be a lot of partners when it comes to economic sort of partnerships. Strategic autonomy must balance value chain partnerships with accepting external risks or external agendas. So that is there. Again, new rules of engagement are emerging, like Asia's rights differs from Western integration. Interconnected digital economy drives technological capacity, military capability and economic growth. India must prioritize. What India must prioritize is national sovereignty, endogenous technology innovation and local defense production, inclusive growth. That should be our priority. National security priorities, cyber warfare, India has to be prepared for. US strategic moves, particularly with vis-a-vis Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Bagram-based ambitions are there of Trump. India has to manage all these, competing sort of interest. Another important aspect is Chhabar Fort and its sanctions. Although India has got the sanctions waiver now, but to a certain extent, India needs its own route with respect to, say, Central Asia. So essentially, the article argues here for our renewed relationship when it comes to Iran, as well as Bangladesh or Afghanistan, Central Asia overall. So essentially, defense modernization and innovation is also at the base of it all. So you can clearly see some of the important points here. Essentially, India is focusing on developing its own indigenous capabilities when it comes to defense. AI sovereignty and global competitiveness. AI is becoming emerging as a very important aspect of foreign policy. That is also very true. For example, there is a risk associated with AI dominance by US. Obviously, the current US regime particularly is very not trustworthy when it comes to technology dominance by AI. So there are some of the recommendations that are given in the article. For example, Indigenous Research Foundation AI models increase funding at least 20-fold, developed high-end computational resources, proprietary models and talent led by the PMO, and AI sovereignty is a crucial for India to become a global power by 2047. So that's what the core of the argument is here, that if India has to drive the overall Asian century that is upon us, India has to become AI superpower by 2047 also. And means we are going in that direction. See, most of the time the AI related developments are very, very vital, and India to certain extent is taking its efforts global, making its efforts known to global audience. But to certain extent, what matters now is investing 20-fold increase. We have to have 20-fold increase. That's what but again, research and development and funds associated is another important problem, another important issue, and whether we will be able to invest such funds in AI is again an issue. But effective implementation of the strategies that we just mentioned are essential for India's emergence as a global power by mid-century. So that's, if India wants to become a global power by mid-century, we have to have these very important strategies in mind. So essentially, this particular article argues for the global order in which there is Asian centrality, but Asian centrality needs to be driven through India's, say, overall priorities vis-a-vis foreign policy. So essentially, very, very important article. That's it from my side, and stay tuned for another edition of Dealing with Analysis. Thank you.